Everybody who's read Saints of the River thinks about how cinematic the novel is. It's perfect. It has a lot of action, it's got strong characters, it's got a dramatic landscape, like this landscape around us. Every place in the Cherokee world had a name. Ron Rash chose to call it the Tomasi, and yet always there is the real river underneath, Chattooga. That's what Cherokee called it. It's a word that has a 400 or 500 year history.
I've grown up around wild rivers all my life, and in the last 30 years I've lived in Clemson, South Carolina, which is only 45 minutes from the Chattooga, which is a beautiful river. And I've spent many hours on that river, hiking it, fishing, and I've come to love it. And it's the largest free-flowing river in the southeast, and it's a river that has been threatened numerous times, but has been able to retain its wild and scenic status. And my hope is that it will continue to.
This is the Chattooga, an example of one of America's finest wild and scenic rivers. The 1968 Wild and Scenic Rivers Act designated a certain set of values that each river had to include. Of course, they can't be dammed. They have to be free-flowing to be a wild river. They have to be relatively inaccessible. Trails are okay. Road crossings should be minimal. They can't be developed. And they also, the framers of the Wild and Scenic River Act also put an interesting phrase in there. They said that these places, like we're sitting in the middle of here, should be vestiges of primitive America.
This particular novel began with an image of a child in water. And I think what I've learned is I have to trust my instincts and believe a story is there. I also knew that at some time in my life I wanted to write a novel that would address some environmental themes. And then as the novel became clear to me, I thought this might be the book to do that in. What art does best is it works best in the realm between black and white, in those areas where there are no clear-cut answers. The fact that Maggie is a photographer, I think, is very important in the book. She brings us a visual eye, someone who's very interested in details and seeing things clearly. And I thought that would be interesting in the sense of a book that's so morally complex that you would have this person searching for the image that might tell us the truth, and then finding it's much more ambiguous than that.
Rivers have always been a landscape of dramatic action in American literature. If you think back to Huckleberry Finn, Huck and Jim headed downstream on the Mississippi River between two states, between two ideas, the free and the slave, the freedom and wildness, the civilization and the territories. A river runs through it, where you have this wonderful brother who is wild and on the edge of crazed, and he's a great fisherman, and the river becomes an area, a place, a space that the narrator can share with his brother. Deliverance, where you have these suburbanites who should have played golf, but instead they go to the river and bad things happen. We don't need to say what sort of bad things. And of course Ron Rash's book, Saints at the River, where you start off with this very, very powerful scene of this young girl wading the river because she wants to stand in two states at one time. And then at the end, when she finally gives up and dies in this hydraulic, she becomes a part of the river. I think Ron even says in there that she becomes a part of the moving river.
When I started Saints at the River, I knew that I was obsessed with this child's death. And it wasn't until I was about halfway through the book that I realized part of that was at least caused by the fact that my son had been run over a few months before I began the novel. And I suspect that a lot of my fears as a parent came through in this book.
This is the famous deadly hydraulic at Woodall Shoals. Many people have died here. Rafters, inner tubers, even a couple of canoeists. I always like to come here and contemplate how wild and scenic rivers aren't amusement rides. They need to be approached with care and with training, and you need to always be aware that there's a risk factor involved on a wild, rocky, scenic river.
Little girl, don't go out there. You could get swept away.
I wanted the novel to have environmental concerns, but I wanted to have enough faith in the reader so that the reader would make up his or her own mind about this situation. I don't like people who tell me how to think. I don't think art works as particularly well as propaganda. But I do think that you can nevertheless focus on certain aspects, certain concerns, particularly in my case environmental concerns, that are important, and at least bring them to the reader's attention.
You don't want to die, do you?